Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project. This is Huck TV. And there's Huck. Huck is the magic dog. You good girl. Yeah. Yeah. Good girl. She is the executive producer of the show. She is demanding. You're a good girl. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah. What's that smell you got there, huh, Dad? Scratch me. Oh, you're a good girl. Yeah. Yeah, you're a good girl. One more time. Yeah, I know. You want me to do that all the time. So she's going to stick on, make sure I do the show right. And the thing about Pyrenees, you see how she can tuck her paw under, like make it go 90 degrees? She does that all the time. It's amazing. German Shepherds can't do that. All right. So we got quite a show for you today, folks. I gotta say, it's only one case, but it's an amazing case. And you're gonna get blown away. That's all I'll tell you about the case today. But somebody sent me something. It says, I've enjoyed your Can-Am 411 shows for years. Since the first broadcast, I heard it on Art Bell, George Norrie, Coast to Coast. Shows where you spoke for 2 to 3 hours. Oh, those were lengthy. Speaking in a chill voice, telling the coolest stories about missing people and cryptids, you hooked me. Oftentimes when I'm driving around with my 4 kids, 6, 8, 11, and 13, we put on your show. It was one of my oldest kids that got me hooked into Bigfoot, and your show would talk about one of their favorite subjects. Keep doing what you are doing. I'm sharing a couple of our discs for you so you can hear what we've been doing. If you ever need intro music or music for future film, please consider using our copyrights for free. And Paul sent me this. Poker Face. Songs for the Revolution. Sex, Lies, and Politics. Thanks a million, Paul. I greatly appreciate it. I got to get through these because I got to thank you guys for doing what you're doing. Next one. Dear Dave, this isn't much, but know you'll do an excellent job for the next film. The first 3 were great. Never miss your videos on YouTube. Thanks for the books, hats. Besides your commemorating the lost, and so appreciate all your hard work and weekly diligence. Most of all, your integrity and honesty are stellar. Karen sent me a check for $50 for the film. Greatly appreciated, Karen. Thank you. And the last one. Very cool card. Thank you, Dave. Looks like it's homemade. I like it. Hey, Dave, I'm grateful for you and all your hard work. Your work is so important. It should be the top story throughout the world. My husband and son are hunters, and I thank you for telling us about personal locator beacons. I worry less now, but still worry when they go. I also appreciate your list on what to take, like dryer lint. Genius. I love your kindness revolution. I have a sign that says, always stay humble and kind, which you definitely are. I would always tell my son to give people a silent hello and a smile. Thanks again. And Kimberly sent me a box of goodies. And the one you guys will like the most is this. A sign. I like it a lot. Thank you so much. And then there was other stuff in here too. A $100 bill to go towards the film. A memo book. Another memo book with stickers all over it. And a bunch of stickers. Bigfoot stickers. You guys are too nice. Too nice. Thank you so much. I greatly, greatly appreciate what you guys do. And it does not go forgotten. Trust me, folks. It does not go forgotten. You guys are brilliant. Thank you. I'm humbled when I get anything. One thing. We are in the struggle period to get this film financed. We have tens of thousands of dollars contributed at this point. But unless we reach our goal We won't get any of that money. It all goes back to you. Our goal, $145,000. We've got to get that. And this is our next movie, Missing 411 National Parks. And we want to make that movie. We need the contributions. Go to Kickstarter.com, Kickstarter1word.com, and then put in Missing 411 National Parks, and you can donate. Everything helps. Everything helps. So there's contribution levels for everybody. I mean, if you just want to donate $5, there's something there. Now, in my time researching missing people, I've probably read way more than 10,000 search and rescue reports, missing person reports, news articles, etc. And in my time, I've got to say the story I'm going to tell you right now, I'd never heard about it until about 3 weeks ago. And then when I found it, it blew me away. Really. Now, some of you have been saying, oh, Dave, I just hate old cases. Mistake. This case I'm going to tell you about, 1945. In the mid-1940s, our world was going through a lot of changes. And there were a lot of things happening. A lot of paranormal and unworldly things happening. And if you've read my books, you know that a lot of strange disappearances happened in that period of time. One of the most prolific states for disappearances of kids during that time, Pennsylvania. Well, Australia wasn't exempt from these things as well, as you're going to find out. Now, as I talk you through this disappearance, I want you to think about all the profile points, and then think about what life was like in 1945 compared to today. Here we go. The girl's name was Valery Eastwell. It's a picture of Valerie, the best one I could find. And the black marks on her face are not on her, those were on the print. She was 9 years old. She went missing August 15th, 1945 at 11:30 a.m. She was 3 feet 6 inches tall, weighed 58 pounds. And she went missing from a place called Gulgul, Australia. Might as well get to that too, right? So this is Melbourne right here. This is a little town called Mildura. And right next to Mildura is Gulgul. They're right next to each other, with Mildura being the bigger town. And right outside of this is a national park. You got it? Okay. As we get closer, I'm going to show you another map. Now, in Valerie's family, they had 10 kids. Valerie was the youngest. She lived with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. George Eastwell. The father was a woodcutter. They had 5 boys, 5 girls in the family. 3 of the brothers were in military service when Valerie disappeared. Now, she disappeared, and the article said she went missing on VP Day. Now, you people in Australia may know that. I have no idea what that is. On the day she disappeared, Valerie was supposedly playing with neighborhood kids, something she did every day. And at about 11:30, she told them that she was going to go home and eat lunch. Wasn't a long walk at all, maybe a house or two. Kids saw her walking in that direction. Now, their home was on the outskirts of the city. And right near her home was a swampy area, a creek, Gulgul Creek, and Murray River. Now, Valerie never made it home. And almost immediately, Mrs. Eastwell started searching and got the other kids in the family to search as well. Kids confirmed she was last seen walking in that direction. So somewhere very near her home, she vanished. Later that afternoon, she called the police, and Mildura police responded in that afternoon hour, took a report, and started to set up. About this time, in the local papers, another story started to come out that Valerie was going to walk 2.5 miles to a relative's home. That was not true. She was playing with kids near her home and went home for lunch. On that first day, August 15th, Mildura police had already started to search. They already decided that they needed assistance to search because they didn't have enough people and they weren't having any luck. So imagine the situation as this house sits near the outskirts of the city. I'll show you this. Now this is the yellow area is Gogol. This is Lake Gogol. At the time of the disappearance, this lake was dry. Now, running right through the city, this is the Murray River. This area out in here, all swampy. At the time she disappeared, swamps everywhere. Mildura is the bigger city, Gogol the very much smaller city, but they're almost next door to each other. When I look at this part of Australia, lakes everywhere, water everywhere, like no other area around. Just putting it in perspective for you. Again, this is the area of the disappearance. You can see water outlining the area. Not a lot of water out here, but water all over this area. Got it? So Mildura police start putting out calls for more assistance. On August 16th, the Murray River was searched along with Gogol Creek by searchers that came into the area. Now, almost immediately, Mildura and Gogol residents heard about this and responded en masse. Gogol had one hotel, the Gogol Hotel, and that was right from the start the search headquarters. And they cooperated. There were carloads of people that first day waiting at the hotel, going out to search based on the police officers' requests. Now, almost from the beginning, remember Gogol Lake I showed you north? Searchers had found tracks, child's tracks, up near Gogol Lake and Baranga. They made a request from the hotel to send 5 carloads of searchers up into that area. And a local Boy Scout troop went as well. The 17th of August, same situation. On the 18th, from a request made by Mildura police on the 17th, the Australian Air Force sent 2 planes to fly over the swampy area. And they also had a black tracker that was an expert go into the bush and start searching. Stop. I really don't care what you guys think you know, but black trackers from Australia are some of the best trackers in the world, bar none. When I was in Australia, I was introduced to some people who knew these trackers. They said, Dave, it's like they have a sixth sense that we don't understand. They look for some of the most minute things that we would never even acknowledge was wrong in the ground, where somebody stepped, broke, bent. They said, no, they are phenomenal. I've heard that from way more than a couple of people. So having a black tracker on scene is huge. Aboriginal tracker. And that first day that he was on scene was the 18th, and he stayed out until very late at night. And the search kept moving out because they weren't finding anything. First they went to 2 miles, then 5 miles, and they were pushing out further from there. August 21st, 6 days after she disappeared, 1,000 residents were on the scene searching. And they also brought in 200 Air Force personnel were on the ground in some of the worst parts of the swamp. The scrub was searched in the Zignum swamp and some of the toughest areas to get through. And it wasn't so much that they expected that Valerie would voluntarily go there, but they meant to clear everything. And they had the Air Force planes flying low and slow to see anything unusual out there. August 22nd, 23rd, all same. The story got national attention across Australia and some international coverage as well, because it was such a mystery. They weren't coming up with anything. August 24th, 100 square miles had been searched by 1,100 men. And 2 police dogs from Sydney were on scene, 2 of the best police dogs in the world. The police gave some of their first theories about what may have happened here. A, she wandered into the bush and is lost. B, she fell into the river and drowned. Or C, there's some type of foul play or kidnapping. Now, if you're in a missing 411, there's D, but they weren't acknowledging that. August 25th, 2 RAF Air Force planes still in the air searching. The Murray River was being dragged by dozens of people to ensure that they didn't miss a body in that river. That's impressive. They've been dragging for days. August 26th, residents in the area told the press that they believe there's some kind of foul play. Those 2 best canines in Sydney were still on scene and still searching. I've told you before that when searchers have a difficult time finding any type of evidence, it always goes towards foul play. It doesn't matter if the next day they find somebody in the water, they're always going to say, oh yeah, it looked like foul play then. Just ignore that. August 31st, the 2 Sydney dogs that were on scene, Zoe and Surrey, had been searching the swamp area when bad weather inundated, and it stated that it made life very difficult and hard for searchers. Not sure, because they didn't say what the weather was, but that's all they said. September 1st, searchers heard screams 14 miles from Golgol. They had searchers that far out about 2 weeks after she disappeared. Now, dogs were in the area of the dried up swamp when their handler said that they seemed anxious. Never heard dog handlers use that term, anxious. But the searchers tried to track down the screams they heard, and they couldn't find anything. Valerie's dad was interviewed and said that she was a super smart girl. She was afraid of the water and would not get near it, her dad said. He said, I have no doubt she's nowhere near the water. And this part of the story got national publicity. The story about her dad's statement said that this incident is in one of the most desolate and inaccessible locations in this part of Australia. And there's some really difficult locations in Australia. So for them to say that must have been rough. September 3rd. A man named Wiley, who was a detective inspector, was put in charge of the case, head of investigations. He said he had looked over all the evidence that had been accumulated and lack of evidence. And he said that he had the theory that Valerie followed kids across Gogol and into the wild tapio country of 224,000 acres. And they found some of those tracks out in that area of the kids, of a child. And they were of the belief that those were made by Valerie. No evidence, but what would a small child be doing way out there? Nighttime temps in the area were described as bitterly cold. Now Zoe and Surrey, the canines from Sydney, were still working ahead of the searchers. And the area around Gogol posted a $100 reward for anything that led to Valerie. Again, we've talked about search rewards before. It's an effort to keep people in the field looking. September 4th, focus now is on the area 14 miles from Gogol because that's where they heard the screams, remember? All searchers were transported from the post office in the city and taken out to the area for free. September 5th, the police get a report of a child close to Valerie's description seen in Gumela 3 weeks ago, maybe just after her disappearance, about the time she vanished. Well, Detective Wiley dispatched a team of detectives into that city and into that region to sort out what was true about that. And detectives stated that the searchers and the dogs would stay on scene until this case was solved. Well, up to this point, I've got to say that very few searches in this time in history had gone on this long, with this much push by people, dogs, airplanes. Unbelievable. Well, September 8th, Mrs. Eastwood was interviewed by the press. She said that her daughter had never traveled more than a mile from her home. Next thing is very interesting to me. She said that Valerie had just recently had her tonsils removed and still was healing and hadn't healed completely. Remember how many times I've told you that people who disappear have some kind of disability or injury that we may know nothing about? That was just like a little 2-line in the 400 articles I reviewed. Little 2 lines in one of those articles. And I thought, I didn't see that anywhere else. September 10th. A search team found bicycle tracks that went from Gogol to an area beyond the sand hills. So Valerie's dad, George, and her older brother decided that they were going to track that and find out where it went. They tracked it for miles and eventually got onto really hard ground and they lost it. They went ahead and searched for many more miles. They couldn't see where it picked up again. It's like it disappeared. An article stated at this point that donations for the searchers were pouring in from cities hundreds of miles away. Here's why. The people that are searching had to walk away from their jobs, the prime source of income. Searchers got to eat. They got to drink. And how that happens? If it's not supplied by the city or the victim's family, people aren't going to stay on site. They got to go home. And you need them on site. So wives and things are feeding searchers. It's got to happen that way. I know it seems absurd, but that's the truth of it. September 11th. Same search continues. Inspector Wiley gave a recent press release that the Murray River was still being dragged for miles. The banks of Gogol Creek were being monitored daily, and multiple dog teams were still on site. Unbelievable effort. September 12th. Father, George Eastwell. They tried to interview him. People said that the man hardly slept. And he had reported to hike over 200 miles in an effort to find his daughter. Stop right there. The number of times I've read about fathers missing children and just pouring out their heart and soul to find them, it's something that's indescribable. Where do they get the stamina? Where do they get the drive to keep it going? It's that bond between children and parents. September 13th. Expert Australian trackers, this time a sergeant in the police from Sydney named Sergeant Riley, worldwide known expert, came in to back up the black tracker that had been working nonstop. The reward now was raised to $200. The paper made it a point to say this, and I think it's a valid point. Why bring in a tracker after the ground had been searched by canines and hundreds of ground searchers and bad weather? It would seem as though that area had been trampled down. But the fact is, it was brought in. So at this point, September 13th, she disappeared on the 15th. You have almost 4 weeks of nonstop searching. 4 weeks. How many times have I told you about a search going on this long? I don't remember one. And from 1945, when life was tough, wow. September 21st, jump ahead a week. Valerie was allegedly seen in a city called Hopetown, about 120 miles from her house. Detective Wiley dispatched a team of detectives to go out there and track down that story. And this is smart. I've told you before that once you get people's picture out in the world, everybody sees them. It's just the way the life is. It's not that they really saw them, but they're looking so hard and people are trying to be good. They think they see somebody close and they want to report it. September 22nd, detectives determined that the hometown sighting was not Valerie. September 23rd, a press report stated that the Eastwell case is the longest and biggest search in Australian history. The same article stated that all of this effort has produced nothing. You get that, folks? Nothing. Detective Inspector Wiley was interviewed and said Valerie was not murdered, but wandered into the bush. Stark fact at the bottom of the article, after 5 weeks, police don't have a clue. October 1st. Searchers extended to north of Limestone Tank and the area was searched systematically. Every paddock within 20 miles was searched. Big effort. Question, when you get that far out, as long as the canines are in front of the searchers and they're given Valerie's scent every day, they will pick up that scent and track. And especially when they boast that they have 2 of the best dogs in Australia from Sydney, I don't understand why, like Wiley said, if she's out there, why aren't the dogs tracking? I don't know. October 10th, search of the swamp and the scrub area was still going on. Police still searching the Murray River and Gogol Creek. October 12th, Wambeara region was searched, and Sergeant Riley, the tracker, are still working ahead of the searchers with no evidence found. November 4th, Valery's brother, Keith, was back from AIF, joined searchers in the bush. The RAAF launched a motor launch and dragged the Murray River for a week. Again, this is an area that had been covered 4, 5, 6 times. And again, in an article, it said Valerie is described as very intelligent. Her dad said there's no way she would go into the bush voluntarily. Father said she would never get into a car. Searchers said almost every inch of ground within 5 miles of the point last seen were searched. But many articles said that they were going out to 10 miles, 20 miles. Now, is that ridiculous? Search guidelines today say in that area that they were, a 7 to 9-year-old child will be found 95% of the time in 7 miles or less from the point last seen. They were on it. They were in the right area. I was trying to think through what I would have done on this search that they haven't done. The only thing I could say is maybe from the very beginning, loop all the way around and get on the back side of that swamp and search inward, rather than starting at the point last seen and going outward. So many times have I told you that a child can be found many miles outside the zone where they think they're going to be found. And I would say that on this case just because they had 1,100 searchers. Throw 100 of them out there at the backside and bring them in. Where you don't have many searchers, I understand not doing that. Now, at about this time, in mid-November, the Australian government brought in some tractors, and the area near Valerie's home, 12 acres of swamp, mushy area, were all tractored up by the government and searched. 12 acres. She wasn't there. But I thought that was impressive. Every inch of ground for 5 miles was searched. That's a heavy statement to make, folks. Because I always think, well, what happens if a year from now she's found in that search area, right? Well, you and I know, but back in 1945, they weren't thinking that. November 10th, there was an article that said the police are absolutely baffled. November 24th, trackers and searchers still on scene. And then finally on December 4th, search is abandoned. 15 weeks. A phenomenal effort. A world-class effort. One I've never seen. My hearts and prayers go out to the searchers that gave their time in trying to find Valerie. On April 5th, 5 months after the search ends, press go back to the police and ask, hey, is there anything new, any clues? Nothing new, no new clues. We're exactly where we were at when we stopped searching. May 24th, 1946. Again, she disappeared August 15th, 1945. The world-famous police dog that was brought in for Sydney and used for 4 weeks on this search, Zoe, died unexpectedly in Sydney. That made news. I think that's weird. Just saying. Police dogs don't die early in life usually because they're so well fed and kept, and they go to vets all the time. I mean, it's bizarre. So let's go over this real quick. The longest search in modern Australian history. Thousands of acres were searched. The Golgol Creek was emptied of water for miles just to ensure that she wasn't in there. The Murray River was dragged for almost 10 miles and then utilized by RAF boat and dragged for additional miles. Nothing. The swamps in the area, gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Dogs crisscrossed that area for months. The best canines in Australia got nothing. And the best tracker, Sergeant Riley, got nothing. So I ask you, you know Missing 411. What happened to Valerie? Now, I know all parents think their kids are smart. But Mr. Eastwell went out of his way to say she was super smart. She was very smart. What have I told you about intellects that go missing? Near water. There's water all over here. With no tracks. They did say that they found child tracks out there, but they went nowhere. And then, if there were child tracks way out there, why didn't the canines pick up on her scent with those tracks? Which they should have. But they didn't. So I doubt that those were Valerie, especially from the best dogs in Australia. And then trackers being used. You know that the trackers were put on those tracks. How did they lose them? I don't know. I really don't know. This is one of those cases, it's probably one in 10,000 disappearances in the bush, in the mountains. And I say that because there is no evidence. I mean, unless the neighbors said Valerie was there that day, which they did, there's no evidence she was even there. But the kids said they were playing with her. Her mom said she let her outside. But absent what the children said, nothing. Do you remember I've told you in the past that it just seems that these disappearances happen to large families? Do you ever remember me saying that? This family had 10 kids. Is that just pure coincidence? I don't think so. Sometimes it's hard to find how many kids are in a family because a lot of times it's never said. It never said in this article if Mr. Eastwell was home when this happened. So I don't know about that one. But Mrs. Eastwell was. 3 of the boys were in military service and weren't there. So that means we're assuming 7 kids were there in the home, with Valerie being the youngest one at 9 years old. Now again, she's not a really big 9-year-old at 3'6" and 58 pounds. Not a real big target. So I ask you, what do you think? What could have happened here? If you listen to her dad, she would not have gone near water. He was adamant. She would not have gotten in a car voluntarily. If she was forced at 9 years old, she'd probably scream. No screams heard. Kids in that neighborhood saw nothing unusual. It's a big whodunit, folks. I appreciate you being here. Kindness is everywhere. You just have to look. It can be around you. How you hold yourself. People look at you, smile. Every time I walk into a room with Huck there, I smile. Hey Huck, how you doing? Why? Because I want her to be a happy dog. Well, if we smile and we greet people at work or at the post office or at the store that way, you're going to get the same response. People like that. People always like somebody who's upbeat and happy. It's always true. And I know that may not be your persona, but just try it someday. It'll serve you well. Last thing, remember, I'll show you this. Give you another shot of Huck too. There she is. She actually got up and walked around a little bit ago. So we got the Bigfoot cruise. And I know there's a lot of you that are thinking about going. Freeze frame that on the bottom right. Put your phone on it and that'll give you all the news. Mariah Mayer's going, Dr. Jeff Meldrum. It's a Caribbean cruise in November 9th through the 16th on Symphony of the Seas. And, of course, I'm going. Hopefully we'll see you there. Go to Gather Up Events, Gather Up, one word, Gather Up Events, and you'll find out more information, or just freeze frame what I'm looking at right now and put your phone on it. That'll give you all the information. Thanks for being here. Paulides out.